Today marks 2 years since I started this YouTube channel, a month after my mom died, as a way for me to process my grief as I desperately tried to make sense of a world without my mom. And somehow 2 years later, I found myself back in the same place. This new wave of grief has brought with it jarring reminders that my mom is dead, as though it happened just yesterday. So I decided to return to the healing rituals I practiced 2 years ago, right after I found out my mom was gone. They brought me back to myself then, and I know they're exactly what I need now. My name is Kirsten, and I spend my days processing grief and healing while staying kind, cozy, and courageous. And today we're going to talk about 5 rituals to help you move through grief. I call these rituals my home rituals because they comfort me the way my mom did, and she was the first home I ever had. These rituals are simple yet powerful. They remind me that I am vulnerable enough to break from grief and strong enough to heal from grief, and that it's okay if I continue to fall into these grief and healing cycles again and again for the rest of my life. It's okay if I never fully make sense of a world without my mom. If you're experiencing grief over the loss of a loved one, over the loss of a life you thought you would have had, or even over the loss of yourself, I hope you practice one of these home rituals to bring you comfort as you move through your grief. The first ritual is for those days when you feel exhausted. We don't always realize that grief takes up so much of our energy. Our minds, bodies, hearts, and spirits are working so hard to function in a life or a world that we no longer recognize. So if you're feeling exhausted, that's a sign that you need to rest. Even if you think you've rested enough, rest more. Give yourself the opportunity to see what you're like when you're well rested. Being well rested during my grief journey made space for me to feel joy. I like to incorporate rest routines into my day. That looks like planned TV watching time, or refusing to work past a certain hour of the day, or attempting a simpler version of whatever I was going to do that day. It's easy to postpone rest in a capitalist world that is constantly asking you to be productive at the expense of yourself. But we're not machines, we're human, and we cannot function without rest. The second ritual is an extension of this practice of rest. It might seem counterintuitive, but sometimes it's exactly what I need to survive my grief. Even though it's been 2 years since my mom died, the shock still hasn't worn off. When I talk about my mom dying, I'm still confused about the words coming out of my mouth, as though my brain hasn't quite caught up yet. I still haven't fully processed the reality that my mom no longer exists in this world. And on days when I can't face that reality, I welcome denial. I go through my day as though my mom didn't die. I wake up and I eat my meals and I do my chores and I talk to my friends and I take care of my baby, and I act like it's totally normal for me to continue living when my mom doesn't get to. Because if I stop to think about the fact that she's dead, I wouldn't be able to get anything done. I think we're allowed to take a break from constantly being hit with the entirety of a life-altering loss. The grief isn't going anywhere. It'll be waiting for us when we're ready to return to it. On the other end of this spectrum is the third ritual. Sometimes you just need to feel the full extent of your sadness and anger, and happiness, and frustration, and loneliness. To hold nothing back, to let everything out, because keeping your feelings bottled up inside isn't sustainable. Eventually, that shit's gonna explode. And so I take time to marinate in my feels, to sit in my feelings until they're no longer consuming me. Songs and movies are my favorite way to marinate in my feels. Listen to some Olivia Rodrigo, watch some rom-coms. I find that connecting with someone else's raw, unfiltered emotions helps me process my own. Helps me identify, express, and regulate the emotions that exist within me, that sometimes feel too big for me to hold, let alone understand. And when I'm in touch with my emotions, they no longer control me, And that has been one of the most empowering ways for me to navigate my grief. After marinating in my feels, I usually lean on the fourth ritual to help me regulate my nervous system after what often feels like a vulnerability hangover. Because feeling emotions is exhausting and we need to recuperate gently, tenderly, and lovingly. I like to engage in care practices that calm my body, like hugging someone I love, or getting a massage, or having a hot shower, or applying lotion on my body, or wearing comfy clothes, or having a cup of hot chocolate, or stepping out into the fresh air. When my body is calm, my spirit feels grounded, and my mind feels steady, and my heart feels settled. And I'm able to see things for what they are and move through the world intuitively. The fifth and final ritual might be my favorite ritual. It was such a beautiful part of my relationship with my mom. And it is one of the greatest joys of my life because it is the most powerful way that I love myself. I'm not always able to practice it, depending on my capacity, and on those days I've learned to lean on others for support because I find it essential to nourish myself with food medicine when deep in grief, to cook and eat foods that heal my body, mind, heart, and soul. When thinking about the impact of grief, eating nourishing meals is a vital tool to help us regulate our emotions. And in a more spiritual sense, certain recipes and foods can carry with them so much nostalgia, which can be so uplifting when navigating grief. I love putting together a bowl that feels like a hug from my belly and recreating meals from my childhood. For me, eating meals with loved ones is also a path towards community, a bridge that can bring people together. And I believe being surrounded by a community is so necessary when healing from grief. Say yes to dinner invitations so you can be treated to food and good company. And accept when others offer to prepare meals for you for the days when you can't bring yourself to cook. If there's one thing I've learned the last 2 years, is if you are not fed, you cannot heal. And that in a nutshell is how I moved through the roughest waves of my grief journey. I'm currently in one, and I honestly don't know what I would do without these rituals, especially because I'm a new mom. I have a baby to take care of, and I can't afford to fall apart. These rituals are a way for me to honor my grief while also showing up the way I want and need to every day. If one of my home rituals speaks to you, please do let me know in the comments below. I'm also sharing some other videos I made about processing grief, so you can check those out if you'd like. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!